Well, everybody, we finally made it. Free agency was a long time ago at this point, and then we had draft season, then we had post-draft trades, and now schedule release. We've all been through a lot already, and every single team has made a ton of moves to try to get better for the 2025 season. And so today, we're going to go through the best moves that every single team made. For some of them, it's draft picks. For some of them, it's free agency or trades or even coaching changes. All 32 teams made their best effort to improve, and we're going to highlight, in my opinion, what their best moves were. We're going to go division by division, team by team, starting with the NFC East and the New York Giants. I'm sure by now you've all seen the absolutely brutal schedule the Giants have to deal with this season. I mean, it's one of the toughest schedules I've personally ever seen, and I've been covering this league for a long time. So it's going to be tough sledding for 2025. But if there is one reason why the Giants are not just going to be in all of these tough games, but might actually win a bunch of them, it's their defensive line. Good pass rushes can be the great equalizer in this sport. And the pass rush the Giants have built is arguably second to none. For me, their best offseason move is a relatively obvious one, but it's also a really important one, and that's drafting Abdul Carter. If you get into a third and long situation against this Giants front, you don't just have to deal with Dexter Lawrence, you also have to deal with Brian Burns and Abdul Carter and even Darius Alexander, who I really loved as a mid-round pick for them as well. He was one of the better interior pass rushers in this class. And oh, by the way, they have Kayvon Thibodeau as their third edge in the rotation, which is ridiculous. A lot of teams would kill to have KT as their third edge. So for me, if there was a reason for Giants fans to not just have optimism about this season, but to have true, genuine hope that they can maybe make a run as a wildcard team, it is that defensive line. Abdul Carter was the correct pick, not just for this year, but for many years to come. He is a tremendous, tremendous addition. Next up, we got the Cowboys, and for me, my favorite move they made all offseason was trading for George Pickens. Dallas did the usual Dallas thing early in the draft and took an offensive lineman, which, by the way, basically always works out for them. I think we should give the Cowboys the benefit of the doubt at this point when they take an offensive lineman, so that was a good pick. But they still needed a true number two to go with CeeDee Lamb. That was a desperate, desperate need for them, and it didn't happen in free agency. It didn't happen in the draft. They had to get one somehow, and ultimately, they got it by trading for George Pickens. As far as values for high-end number two receivers go, I didn't think they gave up a whole lot. And if he has a really big year this year, by the way, and then goes off and gets a bag in free agency, they're going to get essentially the same pick back as a comp pick. So I thought this was a smart way to build the team because worst case scenario, you're getting relatively the same pick back that you paid for George Pickens. It's just you're getting a really good number two for 2025. And then if you have to replace him in the draft or free agency next year, you can do that. But at least for 2025, the Cowboys needed a number two, and they got their number two. This was a great move. The Commanders are already one of the better teams in the NFC, and they've decided to go all in on this Jaden Daniels rookie contract window. They had a tremendous offseason overall. There were a lot of moves I could have picked from, but ultimately, I think their best move was bringing in Laramie Tunsil from Houston via trade. He is an established, dominant pass-protecting left tackle who's been really good basically everywhere he's been. And even though, yes, he did have a bunch of penalties in Houston, ultimately, if you're looking at how many pressures he gave up, he was one of the 5 best tackles in all of football pretty much every single year. If you're looking at the Commanders' tackle duo last year, they gave up the 11th highest pressure percentage on true dropbacks out of every single team. So they really needed to improve at the tackle position. And not only did they draft Josh Connerly in round 1 to be their tackle of the future, but bringing in Laramie Tunsil right now just raises the floor of this passing game so much. He is immediately the best pass protecting tackle this team has had since they had Trent Williams back in the day. And if you're looking at this offensive line overall, I mean, you got Tunsil, Allegretti, Biotish, Cosme, Brandon Coleman, and then the aforementioned Josh Connerly as your swing tackle. I mean, that is a darn good offensive line. So I am really excited about this Commanders offense this year, not just because Jaden Daniels is amazing, which he is, but because their offensive line also might be amazing. And if you have an amazing quarterback behind an amazing offensive line, throwing to Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, Jalen Lane, Luke McCaffrey, the weapons go on and on. This is going to be a good offense, folks. So as good as the Commanders were last year, they're going to be even better this year. Finally, rounding out the NFC East here, we have the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles. And well, yes, I could have picked from a lot of different moves here because it's Howie Roseman's season, and he always makes a lot of good moves. To me, their best offseason move was extending Zach Bond. You could argue last year that among all off-ball linebackers in the entire NFL, nobody was better than Bond in 2024, and it was his first year playing that position full-time. He did everything at an elite level in 2024, whether it was playing the run, pass rushing as a blitzer, even zone dropping in coverage. Like, I did not realize that he was that good as a zone dropper, but he was one of the best coverage linebackers too, which really took me by surprise. There is nothing that he is not one of the 3 to 4 best linebackers at in all of football, and they got him at a 15% discount from the top of the market. His contract is for $17 million a year. The top of the linebacker market is at $20 million a year. And if you're comparing that to the top of the defensive player market overall, I mean, you've got DBs making $30 million now. You've got defensive linemen that are making high 30s, low 40s at this point. So for me, the Eagles got Zach Bond, who was one of the 15 to 20 best defensive players, regardless of position in 2024, and they got him for $17 million a year. His impact is worth way more than $17 million. So I thought that was a great deal by Howie. They all struck while the iron is hot. And I think Bond is going to more than live up to that contract in 2025. Moving over to the AFC East now, we're starting out with the New England Patriots, who also, by the way, had an incredible offseason. I mean, they did more work than basically anybody to improve their team for 2025. But ultimately, their best move was the first one they made in the draft, and that was taking Will Campbell from LSU. People talk about arm length over and over and over again when it comes to Will Campbell, but I'll be honest with you guys, arm length is not the end-all be-all when it comes to tackle play. There are, frankly, a lot of tackles that have come into the NFL with like 34.5-inch arms, 35-inch arms, and they can't block anybody. If arm length was all that mattered, the starting tackle duos across the league would look a lot different. It's really not that important. Sure, it'll help to have long arms if you already have good punch accuracy and good grip strength and good core strength, and your feet are really good and you've got, really fluid hips. Like, yeah, arm length can kind of take you over the top, but if you don't have any of those things as a foundation, you're just going to be a bad tackle anyway. Luckily for Will Campbell, he's good in all those areas. He's got very accurate punches. He's got great grip strength. He re-anchors super well because he has core strength. And obviously his first step is super explosive and he's got fluid hips. Like, I don't understand why the only thing people were talking about was arm length, as if every other component to being an elite tackle wasn't already in his favor. Nobody was talking about anything else because there was nothing else to talk about. Like, there was no other weaknesses on paper. So for me, Will Campbell is a tackle until he's not. Like, I am playing him at left tackle on day one, and I am sleeping like a baby. He is a very, very good tackle prospect, and he is more than just his arm length. So I don't know. Watch the tape. How about that? Next up, we have the New York Jets, who also took a tackle early on in the first round, Armand Membou. And just like the Patriots, I think that early investment at the tackle position was their best move of the offseason. Membou has a more traditional build, I guess you can call it, for an elite tackle prospect. He's got the long arms. He's got the huge frame. He's got an elite first step. Like, athletically speaking, there is nothing wrong with Armand Membou. He also had the lowest pressure percentage allowed out of anybody, especially on true dropback passes, meaning non-RPOs, non-screens, non-play action, like just straight dropback passes. He was the most efficient pass blocker in this class, even over Will Campbell. And he did that in the SEC, by the way. So he was facing killers every single week, and he dominated everybody. He was, for me, personally, my highest graded tackle in this class. So I was a little bit surprised that he made it to the Jets in the first place, but they are ecstatic that he did. He's going to be a day one starter for them, opposite of Olu Fashanu. And if you're looking at that Jets offensive line overall, you got Fashanu, Simpson, Joe Tippmann, AVT, Armand Membou. Just like Washington earlier, like that is a really good young offensive line. So I'm excited to see what they do with it this year. And I'm also excited to see how Justin Fields progresses behind arguably the best pass protecting line he's ever had. Keep an eye on the Jets. All of a sudden, they are a really interesting team because they took Armand Membu. Heading down to Miami now to talk a little Dolphins. My favorite move they made all offseason was drafting Kenneth Grant. And this was a pick that caught a lot of people by surprise. Most people didn't have them pegged for interior defensive line early on in the draft. I, however, did. I just thought they were going to take Derek Harmon. Now, the reason for that is because I thought Kenneth Grant was going to be off the board. He was my highest graded DT overall. So for me, my surprise came from just having Grant available to begin with. I thought he was going to be long gone by then. So to even have him available at their pick in the first place, I thought was a huge blessing. And he fills, both literally and figuratively, a big need for them. They desperately needed a flexible interior defender that can line up as anything from like a true zero nose all the way out to being a 5 technique. He gives them front versatility, but more than anything, he just isn't movable on the line of scrimmage. Like they needed that boulder that everything else could kind of orbit around. A lot of the best defenses in the NFL have that kind of piece. Miami didn't, but now they do. If you're watching the Michigan defense on tape, not just last year, but really the last couple years, Grant to me was the straw that stirred the drink. Mason Graham got a ton of attention. Will Johnson got a ton of attention. The linebackers, I mean, they just had so many guys on that unit. But Kenneth Grant was kind of what made everything work. The reason why they could get teams into 3rd and 7 and 3rd and 8 so consistently and then just kind of let the dogs off the leash, whether it was Mason Graham, Josiah Stewart, again, all their pass rushers, they only got to 3rd and long in the first place because of Kenneth Grant's existence. He was dominant. I mean, truly dominant on early downs. So for this Dolphins defense, if we're trying to get the most out of Jalen Phillips, the most out of Bradley Chubb, obviously the addition of Chop Robinson last year, if we want to give them true pass rushing opportunities, you got to get to 3rd and long in the first place. That is what Kenneth Grant is there to do. He is going to put offenses into 3rd and long, and then from there, it's up to the edge rushers to finish the job, which I think they are more than capable of doing. Love this pick from Miami. He is going to bring a true attitude adjustment to that defensive line, and I couldn't be more excited for them. Rounding out the AFC East now, we have the reigning division champion Buffalo Bills. And if we're being totally truthful about it, the Buffalo Bills are no longer building their roster for September through December. Not to say that they don't care about the regular season, but the success or failure of this year is not measured by just winning the AFC East again. Their roster is built for January. And more specifically, their roster is built from matching up against the other teams that they know they're going to see in January because they see them every year. And to me, the one move they made this offseason that embodies that philosophy is signing Joey Bosa. I know I don't speak for the Bills on this, but I personally don't really care what he does in the regular season. He's not there for the regular season. He is there for 3rd and 7 against Patrick Mahomes in the AFC Championship. He is there to get the one sack they need to send them to the Super Bowl. And if he gets that one sack, this contract is worth it. I almost look at Joey Bosa as like the Porsche 911 GT3 that you keep in the garage until race day. You use it like once a month, but you get it out on the track and it just absolutely obliterates everybody. Like that's what Joey Bosa is. He's not your daily driver. You're not getting groceries with Joey Bosa. You're taking him out to the track like on that one Sunday a month when you can really cut loose. That is his role. He's worth every penny. He's going to be really good in that role. And when the Bills go on another playoff run and he's, randomly popping off in January and making plays that they need to make that they couldn't get last year, you're going to understand why this signing was so important. Sometimes the best teams need to add a mercenary or two to get them over the hump, and that is what Joey Bosa is. He is a mercenary to get this team over the hump. I don't know about you guys, but I think the Panthers are a sneaky, fun team in 2025, and they certainly had their issues in 2024. Don't get me wrong. Their pass rush was right at the top of the list, or I guess technically speaking, the bottom of the list because they were the worst pass rush in the NFL. But if you're looking at their duo of rookies they just added, Nick Scorton and Princely Umanmielen, that is a really entertaining young duo of pass rushers. And they do it in very different styles. Umanmielen is more of like a true speed rusher. His first step is blindingly quick, to the point where he just routinely catches tackles off guard with how explosive he is, and he'll beat him to the corner before they even have a shot of putting their hands on him. Whereas Scorton is more of like that classic big body kind of power rusher that has way better hips than you expect in a 270-pound frame. Like, you see him throwing spin moves at his size, and you're like, wow, how is he even doing that? Like, he almost reminds me of Zadarius Smith, but even more athletic. So again, two complementary styles here. I couldn't pick between them, but I loved both of these picks. And I think both of them are going to get a lot of snaps on this defense because, not to be mean, but if you look at the Panthers pass rush last year, there's a lot of snaps available. Let's put it that way. Again, watch the Panthers this year. I think they're going to be really entertaining and one of the more underrated ball clubs in the NFC. Hopping on over to New Orleans now and the Saints, and my favorite offseason move they made was Kelvin Banks Jr., the tackle out of Texas. He's going to be tasked with blocking that young Panthers edge rush duo, as well as every other edge rush duo in the NFC, which, by the way, there's a lot of good ones. They have to deal with Nick Bosa this year. They also, ironically, have to deal with Joey Bosa and Greg Rousseau. They got to play against that Giants front I mentioned earlier. They got to play against Jared Verse and the Rams. They have to play against the aforementioned Dolphins edge rush trio. I mean, there's a lot of good pass rushes on the schedule here, and I think the Saints would have really struggled to handle that gauntlet if they didn't take Kelvin Banks. He's got great hand placement and grip strength. I also love his power. He's really smart. I think his first step is not as elite as Membu or Campbell, but he makes up for it again with technical refinement and just raw strength. He kind of reminds me a lot of Cordy Glenn in that way. So I think he's going to be a really solid starting tackle for a long time. And he's the kind of offensive lineman that really hits the ground running in the NFL. You don't really have to teach him anything. He already knows what he's doing. You pair him up with Fuaga, who they took in the first round last year, and I really do think the Saints have one of the more exciting young tackle tandems. And I think both of them are going to pay dividends, not just in 2025, but for many, many years to come. Next up, we have Atlanta. The Falcons have poured a ton of resources into this defense over the last few off seasons, and this offseason was no different. I mean, they traded up and took 2 pass rushers in the first round. That's how desperate they are to improve this defensive line. But ultimately, I think their best move they made to improve this defense was Xavier Watts, who was their 3rd round pick. And the reason why I believe that is because Watts doesn't just improve your defense because, he's a great safety in his own right, but I think he also improves your offense because he's going to give Michael Penix short fields to work with. His ability to generate turnovers was second to none in this class. And even though he doesn't have elite range and acceleration, he makes up for that with elite instincts, ball skills, footwork, and hip fluidity. Like, he will beat you to that spot. He's not faster than most of the receivers he's going to cover at the NFL level, like especially at the NFL level. I mean, there's speed demons all over the place. But he is such an efficient mover in the sense that he changes direction super fast. So he doesn't really have to make up ground with speed. He's just already going to be in the right spot. He's really proficient at reading concepts, not just routes. So he understands receiver distribution. He understands how quarterbacks manipulate coverages. He understands how concepts also manipulate coverages. Like, every single route fits together like a puzzle piece on most offensive designs. If I had to compare him to anybody, he's got kind of a Justin Simmons feel to him, who also, again, wasn't the most athletically gifted safety. He didn't have the best range. He didn't have the best acceleration, but he was such an efficient mover with the tools that he did have, and he was so smart and so instinctive and had such outrageous ball skills that he was still one of the better turnover generators in the league. And I think that's really what Xavier Watts is going to be. If you need a safety who isn't just going to do his job, but is also going to be an impact player on the field and set Michael Penix up at like the opposing 40-yard line, that's your guy. His presence on the field is going to generate points offensively, which I know is a weird thing to say about a safety, but in his case, it's true. This was a really, really good pick. It is extremely rare to play 10 years in the NFL. Like, that in itself is a career achievement. And so when I say that Emeka Egbuka was one of only 3 players in this class that I am absolutely sure is still going to be playing in 2035, that is about as high a compliment as I can possibly give. He is the definition of a safe pick. And I don't just mean on the field, I mean off the field too. Like, his leadership is truly off the charts. Like, even as a rookie, it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up with a captain patch. He's that kind of dude. And then you throw in the fact that, oh, by the way, he's got excellent deep speed. He's a great route runner. He's got short area burst. He's got incredible hands. He blocks his ass off in the run game. There's just nothing wrong here. It's Robert Woods all over again. Like, everybody knew when Robert Woods was coming out of USC, he was going to play forever. And, well, he played forever. Like, everybody saw that one coming. And everybody sees it coming with Emeka Egbuka. You cannot possibly hate this pick. I don't even care that they already had Mike Evans and Chris Godwin and Jalen McMillan. Like, I don't care. He was that good of a pick. He is that good of a player. He is going to be with the Bucs forever, and for good reason. Jason Light, if you're watching this, I mean, A+, dude. You could not have possibly made a better pick there. Heading to the AFC South now, and the Tennessee Titans, obviously their best move of the offseason was taking their next franchise quarterback, Cam Ward, at first overall. I'm not going to lie to you and say that I have as high of a grade on Ward as I did on the top trio last year of Caleb Williams, Drake May, and Jaden Daniels, in whatever order you want to put them. But that doesn't mean that Cam Ward was not worth this pick. He absolutely was worth the first overall selection. And truth be told, I could see him being, at minimum, a solid starting quarterback as a rookie. He is really good out of structure and kind of making something out of nothing, which if you watched any Miami football last year at all, that was plainly obvious. But I think his true superpower is what he does in structure. When he is on time and in rhythm, he works the intermediate middle of the field better than any other quarterback in this class by far. And usually if you're good at working that area of the field, that translates to NFL success because most college quarterbacks can't really work the intermediate middle. In college, the hashes are wider, the RPO rules as far as ineligible receivers downfield are different, and it kind of creates an environment where most college offenses rely on working outside the numbers rather than in between the numbers. That level of football is very horizontal in terms of how their passing game is structured. It's a lot of bubble screens, a lot of RPOs. You're taking shots on go balls down the sidelines, whether it's to the boundary or to the field. But most successful NFL quarterbacks, like, they're hitting that deep dig as their third read in the progression. They're throwing the high cross-off play action. They're working choice routes over the middle. Like, you have to work in between the numbers in the NFL just because the hashes are narrower. So defensive structures force you to work the middle of the field. And so the fact that Cam Ward is already good at doing that I think is going to make him hit the ground running at the NFL level. And I think ultimately he is going to be a really, really good quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. The last time this franchise had even solid quarterback play, they went to the AFC Championship. So I wouldn't be surprised if within a few years, we might see the Titans make another run here. Next up, we have the Jaguars here, and obviously their best move of the offseason could not be anything other than their trade up for Travis Hunter. And I'll be honest, this move received a lot more criticism than I thought it would, although it was less about how good of a player Travis Hunter is, which, he was the best player in this draft class, but a lot of people were criticizing how much they gave up to go get him. And that is where I vehemently disagree, because the way I looked at this draft class, there was kind of a shelf after the top 3. You could maybe argue after the top 4 picks. And the Jags were sitting at 5. They were after that shelf. They were out of blue chipper range. And considering that the Jags also think that they have a shot at getting a wild card spot this year, they're not going to be in range to take another blue chipper next year, or maybe the year after that, or the year after that. Like, they really do think that they're better than their record was last year. So giving up a future asset that's going to be lower in future rounds to get the last blue chipper that they might actually be in real range to get for the next few years, that makes total sense to me. And, oh, by the way, Travis Hunter isn't just a blue chipper. He is one of the best blue chippers that we've seen in recent memory. He is a transformational player, both on and off the field at multiple positions. He's one of the very few players in this class that I think could be a Pro Bowler out the gate. And when you're sitting at 5 in this draft class in particular, and you're looking at the names that I think were going to be available at that 5th pick versus, Travis Hunter, it's not really a discussion to me. Like, he is so much better than a lot of the players that I think were otherwise on the board for Jacksonville at that 5th pick. I think the assets were more than worth it. In fact, this kind of reminds me of the trade for Julio Jones once upon a time, where Atlanta was also criticized for giving up a ton of picks to go up and get Julio, who turned out to be, a first ballot Hall of Fame caliber kind of receiver. And 12 months after that trade, nobody was really criticizing the Falcons anymore. And I kind of think it's going to go the same way here. So for me, great pick by the Jaguars, great process by the Jaguars. They got a true star on and off the field, and perhaps a franchise icon. Moving over to the Indianapolis Colts now, and my favorite overall move they made this offseason was their selection of JT Tuimoloau on day 2 in the draft. He was one of the better edge prospects in this class, and I think he's a perfect fit for what the Colts needed, because not only did they just need another edge rusher for their rotation, but they needed somebody with JTT's power-based skill set so that he could make everybody around him better. If you're looking at the Colts pass rush as a unit last year, it felt very disjointed. It almost felt like 4 guys playing next to each other, not with each other. The layers of their pass rush just didn't really fit together well. The timing was off. There was a lot of freelancing going on. But if you look at how JTT plays, he kind of is the glue that holds a pass rush together. If you need him to collapse the pocket and kind of flush a quarterback into a more finesse-based rusher, he can do that. If you want him to be the finesse-based rusher and you want him to be the finisher while somebody else sets up the pins and he knocks him down, he can do that as well. He can set up stunts by spiking inside. He could be the looper and the contained player outside. You want to line him up as a stand-up rusher, he can do that as well. Like, any technique, any alignment, any style of pass rush, he is very capable of doing. And even though he's not a master of anything, it's that versatility, it's that effort, it's that physicality. Like, he really was the glue of that dominant Ohio State front last year because he could play so many roles and do so many different things. I kind of think that's what he's going to do for Indy as well. He complements Leatu Latu. He complements DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart and all of these really good individual defensive linemen that the Colts have. And I think he's going to make them better at playing as a team, which is what they desperately, desperately need up front. So it was a great pick in a vacuum because he's a great player, but he's also going to be a force multiplier for everybody else. That is why the selection of JTT was the best move they possibly could have made. Rounding out the AFC South now, we have the reigning division champion, Houston Texans. And I'm going to be honest with you, I got greedy here. I couldn't really make a decision between whether drafting Jaden Higgins or drafting Jalen Noel was their best offseason move. So I'm just going to talk about both of them because they were teammates at Iowa State, and now they're going to be teammates with the Houston Texans. They have very complementary skill sets to one another. Jaden Higgins is more of your classic X receiver. You line him up outside. He's not moving anywhere because, again, he's on the ball, so he can't move anywhere, which means he's going to be contending with all these press man corners that can just line up and box with him. And that is what he is really good at. Like, he will box with a press corner. He will dominate with physicality. He will win 50-50 balls down the sideline. And he will be your main vertical on-ball threat. Meanwhile, Jalen Noel is kind of like that Santana Moss style speed slot player. And there's a bunch of different slot archetypes at this point in the NFL. There's your captain choice routes, your Wes Welker, Julian Edelman types. There's power slots like Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. There's gadget slots like, Tavon Austin, once upon a time Percy Harvin. Jalen Noel, again, is really more of that Santana Moss style slot where, yeah, you could run him on choice routes, but that would be wasting his God-given ability to really stretch the field vertically. He is a great route runner. He's got excellent contested catch skills, even though he's not the biggest guy. Everything he does is at 100 miles an hour. And so if you've got Nico Collins as your number one, who's actually going to be a Z receiver as a number one receiver, just because, again, movable chess piece, you can kind of put him anywhere and just find matchups. You got Higgins as the X, everything kind of orbits around him. And then you got Noel as your vertical speed slot option who can stretch the field from an inside alignment. Like, you got a bunch of different skill sets here that you got to deal with when you play against Houston. But if their pass pro actually does hold up, you're not going to be able to cover these guys. Like, find me a secondary that can not just handle Nico Collins one-on-one, which very few corners can, but you also have somebody who can actually run with Jalen Noel deep, and you also have a big physical corner that can handle Higgins outside without just getting posterized over and over and over again on go balls. Like, I don't know if a secondary like that actually exists in the NFL. Like, maybe Denver, and that's about it, I guess. So this receiving core is going to be insanely difficult to deal with. And that is why these selections of Higgins and Noel, I just couldn't decide between them, because they both fill vital roles for this team, and they are both really, really good in those roles. Finally, moving out west now, starting with the NFC West and the oddly fourth place San Francisco 49ers. We're not used to seeing them all the way down in fourth place, but when you have an injury-riddled season like they did, sometimes that happens, but this team is much better than a fourth place team. And part of the reason for that is all the work they did in the draft. Again, I could not choose which pick I wanted to highlight the most, so I'm just going to highlight all of their defensive line picks at the same time. We're looking at Mykel Williams, Alfred Collins, and CJ West back to back to back. The one trait that all of these guys share is that they are dominant run stoppers. You could argue that regardless of position, these were 3 of the 10 best run-stopping defensive players, whether it's edges, 3 techs, nose tackles, linebackers. Like, these are 3 of the 10 best run stoppers at any spot in this entire draft, and all of them went to the same team. So to me, the Niners went into this offseason with a very clear mandate, and that was improve a beleaguered run defense from last year. They do not want to consistently be in 3rd and 3. They want to be in 3rd and 7 because they have Nick Bosa. And if you're going to pay Nick Bosa as much money as they're paying him, you need to get him into true pass rush situations. You need to put offenses behind the chains. You need to make them uncomfortable so that Nick Bosa can do Nick Bosa things. And when you have Mykel Williams lining up next to Alfred Collins and next to CJ West, like, I'm sorry, that line of scrimmage is not going anywhere. Like, if anything, you're going backwards as an offense. Like, basically, nobody in the league outside of maybe 3 to 4 teams has enough horsepower to move those guys off the line. They are too big. They are too strong. They are too technically refined. Like, this is going to be insane watching all these guys go to work together. I understand they're rookies. I don't particularly care because all of them are coming into the league NFL ready with NFL caliber strength. They are going to hit the ground running, and when they hit the ground running, it's going to hurt. Like, I'm just telling you right now, watch this Niners run defense this year. They're going to be easily top 10, if not top 5. And when this defense is back to form, I think the Niners are going to be back to form because they truly have a trench-focused identity. And when they are good in the trenches, they tend to go on deep playoff runs. Next up, we have the Arizona Cardinals, who had one of the sneakier offseason acquisitions, in my opinion, and that was picking up Josh Sweat from the Eagles. This team really desperately needed an infusion of explosiveness and power into their edge rush rotation, and that is what they're getting from Josh Sweat. You pair him with hopefully a healthy BJ Ojulari, as well as Baron Browning, who is kind of a quick twitch, bendy edge rusher opposite of him. You got Calais Campbell back in town, hopefully guiding and teaching Walter Nolan and kind of maximizing what we think he can be. Dalvin Tomlinson is going to be rounding out the room as their new nose tackle. And then, of course, you have last year's first-round pick in Darius Robinson. All of a sudden, this Cards D-line looks pretty good, but the fact that they got Josh Sweat to really be the anchor to that edge rush rotation, I cannot speak highly enough of this move. I thought it was great value. And he is going to be the guy who can clean up all of the chaos that interior trio of Robinson, Tomlinson, Campbell, and obviously we'll throw Walter Nolan in there too. So let's just call it an interior quartet. They're going to cause a lot of destruction inside. Josh Sweat's going to be able to clean all that up. And I think he's going to have a big, big year as a result. This Cardinals defense might be a lot better than people are giving them credit for as of right now. So just keep an eye on them throughout the preseason and obviously throughout training camp. I think they could be one of the surprise teams in the NFC. Great addition, and overall, a great offseason out there in Arizona. After 2 straight teams talking defensive linemen, how about we talk about offensive linemen for a little bit? because the Seattle Seahawks just did something that I never, ever thought they would, and that's take a guard in the first round. John Schneider has famously talked about how guards can be overvalued and overpaid in the past, and not going to lie, I think that was a smokescreen. I think he was just straight up lying to everybody because he was praying to the football gods that Gray Zabel would fall to him, and he did. I couldn't believe it. Like, not only could I not believe that Seattle actually took him, but I couldn't believe that Gray Zabel was there to begin with. He was the best interior offensive lineman in this class, and he was one of the few linemen that I think could truly play at all 5 positions. And that is not a common thing. There's maybe a dozen guys in the entire NFL that I think could be 5-tool offensive linemen, and he is one of them. He played left tackle at North Dakota State, only allowing the quarterback to be touched twice the entire year. Yes, that is a real stat. Yes, he was that dominant in pass protection. Now, of course, the one worry that everybody had about him was, okay, he was dominant at the FCS level, but that was FCS competition. What happens, when he goes against NFL caliber guys week after week? Well, he went to the Senior Bowl and dominated everybody there as well. Like, he had no issues against SEC and Big Ten and ACC talent, Big 12 players. Like, he's just better than everybody. Kind of doesn't matter where he's playing. He has just been better. And that was backed up at the combine as well. Like, I was on the field at the drills watching him from 10 to 15 feet away, and he looked like the best mover out there among all the great offensive lineman prospects that were in this class. He still stood out to me. So I have no complaints about this pick. I think he was one of the very best players in this class, one of the 10 to 12 best overall players in this class. The only reason he went at 18 is because, again, he's an interior offensive lineman. A lot of franchises don't value that super highly, or at least as highly as I think they should. But ultimately, the Seahawks got one of the best players in this class at a discount. That is what matters to me the most. And I think he's going to hit the ground running and be a great NFL guard from day one. This was an excellent, excellent pick. Rounding out the NFC West here with the LA Rams, and their best move, in my opinion, was swapping out Cooper Kupp for Davante Adams. And that is nothing against Cooper Kupp, by the way. He was a Triple Crown winner for a reason. He's a tremendous receiver. But I do think that his skill set, I don't know if redundant's the right word, but maybe excessive is. Like, I feel like you have 2 power slots there with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. You really only need one, and Puka Nacua at this point in his career is just the best power slot in the NFL. So for me, the Rams didn't necessarily need Kupp's skill set as badly as they needed Davante Adams' skill set. They needed a true X receiver that can line up outside, win in ISO ball situations, while Puka Nacua is the power slot. And, he can play Z as well and just be that movable chess piece that kind of works more inside. Davante Adams then works outside. I think when you have Kupp and Puka together, they just kind of do the same stuff, and they really desperately needed that dominant outside receiver. And even though Adams himself is up there in age, he is still just as good as he was a couple of years ago. Like, I have not seen him slow down at all. This is the best quarterback situation he's had, obviously, since his Green Bay days. And I think we're about to see a resurgence in Davante Adams' production, especially because he is going to be allowed to play the role that he does best out there in LA as an X receiver. I think overall this Rams offense is going to be at least top 10 in the NFL, if not, top 5 or 6, assuming everybody stays healthy. And it's largely because their receiving core as it is now just kind of fits better together as far as matching skill sets than they've had in quite a while. So again, this is nothing against Cooper Kupp. He's amazing, but Davante Adams, he's just a better fit as of right now. All right, it's AFC West time, starting with the Las Vegas Raiders. And of course, their best offseason move, without a doubt, was bringing in Geno Smith. Geno, in my opinion, is one of the more misunderstood quarterbacks in the NFL, and he is way, way better than I think people give him credit for. Yes, a lot of the red zone turnovers were flat out ugly, but keep in mind, that dude was fighting for his life on basically every play. The Seahawks offensive line has been kind of a disaster the last couple years, hence me praising the Gray Zabel pick earlier. But when you're looking at Geno Smith in a clean pocket, which he didn't get that often, he was one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. Keep in mind, these are his ranks among all NFL starting quarterbacks on dropbacks where there's no pressure, which in Geno's case, there was 428 such dropbacks last year. He was 8th in passer rating at 106.3. He was 5th in adjusted completion percentage at 80.7%, which is excellent. He had a 4.1% big time throw rate per PFF, which is also extremely high. He had a turnover-worthy play rate of only 1.2%, which was 10th best among all starting quarterbacks. Again, the turnovers were really more of a problem under pressure, not when he was clean. And he had the 3rd best touchdown to interception ratio in the entire league at 14-2. So when Geno Smith has a real offensive line, he is a great quarterback. He just hasn't really had a real offensive line the last couple of years. He's done the best he could, but honestly, looking at the Raiders starting offensive line right now of Colton Miller, probably Caleb Rogers at left guard, JPJ at center, Dylan Parham at right guard, and then either DJ Glaze or maybe Charles Grant at right tackle, that's a better offensive line than he's had in Seattle, to be perfectly frank. So I think he's in line to have an excellent year, and we know that his offense is probably going to be in pretty advantageous situations on 3rd down anyway because he's got Ashton Genty toting the rock. So he's going to have a lot of 3rd and 5s, not 3rd and 9s. And that's going to go a long way towards us seeing the best version of Geno Smith. I think the Raiders are potentially a wild card team. I'm not afraid to say it. They could be fighting for that 6th or 7th seed. And ultimately, they're still going to be in the hunt by Christmas, which I think is something that Raiders fans would accept at this point, which I think is something that Raiders fans would be excited about at this point. They want to be in the hunt at least, and this team will definitely be in the hunt. Next up, we have Denver, who was a wildcard team last year, but they have much bigger aspirations in 2025. They want to capitalize on having this rookie quarterback contract window, and really, they're going all in right now. They think they can go on a deep run immediately, and honestly, they think they might even be able to win the division. And if you're looking at how good this defense is, I don't blame them for having that kind of goal. This might legitimately be the best defense in the NFL. And a big reason for that was their best offseason move, which is bringing in Dre Greenlaw from San Francisco. When watching Greenlaw on tape last year, you wouldn't even know that he was coming off a torn Achilles. He looked just as explosive, just as twitchy as he always did, and obviously his instincts are still top-notch. He is easily one of the 5 to 7 best linebackers in the NFL when he is healthy. And the fact that Denver is slotting him into a defense that already has a really good pass rush. They've got Nick Bonito. They've got Jonathan Cooper. They've got Zach Allen. They've got John Franklin Myers, DJ Jones. They just added Savion Jones in the 3rd round, by the way. Quay Robinson, they got an early day 3. He was one of the better edges in the SEC. So they've got a great pass rush. They've also got an incredible secondary, maybe the best overall secondary in the league with Surtain and Hufanga, who they also brought over from San Francisco. Brandon Jones, Raleigh Moss, Jahdae Barron. Jahdae Barron, they got it the 20th pick. Are you kidding me? This defense is disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And it was really hard for me to pick which piece I thought was their best addition. I just went with Dre Greenlaw because I think he might be overall their best defensive player outside of, obviously, Pat Surtain. But that's really high praise. There's so many killers on this defense. I think they're absolutely going to eat offenses alive every single week. I mean, just getting to 18 points, I think is going to be an achievement against this group. So, yeah, Denver, they do have a real shot at winning the AFC West. Would they be my pick? It's tough to bet against Patrick Mahomes, but would I be entirely surprised? Not really. These guys are that good. And speaking of aspirations to knock Kansas City off the top of the AFC West, we're going to talk about the Chargers here. And there's a lot of options to pick from because the general theme of their offseason was just adding as many weapons as humanly possible. They drafted a couple receivers. They brought in Najee Harris in free agency. They brought in Tyler Conklin. They drafted Oronde Gadsden. But their best overall offseason move, in my opinion, was adding Omarion Hampton at running back in the 1st round. Out of all the skill players that this team added this offseason, Hampton is easily the best one. He is a freak of nature at running back. There's no other way to describe him. And when I was watching him work out at the Combine in Indy, the only comp I could come up with in the moment was a ballet dancer, which I know sounds weird, but just when you watch this guy move, every single step he takes, he looks like he's floating. I don't know how somebody that big and that strong also just has that much grace and agility and fluidity. Like he's almost like DeMarco Murray and Joe Mixon all mixed together, which I know is incredibly high praise, but that's the kind of athlete we're talking about here. He has every single trait you could possibly want in a franchise running back. Size, power, speed, lateral agility, vision, acceleration. I mean, I just go through every single trait and he just checks all the boxes. And oh, by the way, he catches the ball pretty well too, and he can pass protect. He's not the best pass protector in this class, that'd be Travion Henderson, but he's pretty good in that area. Jim Harbaugh wouldn't have drafted him if he couldn't block, and obviously he can block. So yeah, they already had Najee Harris, and they already had Kamani Vidal, who I liked a lot as a day 3 investment last year, but let's be real, folks. Amari Hampton, that's the dude. He's going to get the bulk of the work on this team, and I think he could very, very easily be a top 5 rusher in the NFL as a rookie. That is how special he is. I loved this pick. Rounding out the AFC West, we have the reigning division champions and Super Bowl runner-ups, Kansas City Chiefs. They also had an excellent draft, in my opinion, and I would characterize it more as a reload than a rebuild. A lot of these moves were really just kind of patching up immediate holes that they had to address to then go on another deep playoff run here. And ultimately, I do think they are going to go on another deep playoff run. They didn't have that many weaknesses to speak of, but maybe their biggest weakness they addressed early in the draft, and that was left tackle. So to me, their best offseason move was drafting Josh Simmons. I understand he's coming off a really, really serious injury, but the fact that he was already recovered enough after just a few months post-op to do a private pro day where he looked pretty darn explosive. Like I couldn't even tell that he was coming off a patella injury. Like he's clearly healing at a pace that we didn't expect, or rather that just isn't normal. But he's such a freakish athlete that I'm also not that shocked. Like if anybody was going to come back as quickly as he has, it was going to be Josh Simmons. He is a special, special mover at the left tackle position. Like very, very rare movement ability. I would compare it to Laramie Tunsil when he was coming out of Ole Miss. Like he just never gets beat to the corner. He's got great hands. I love his mirror ability. He's got core strength. Like he just has every tool in the toolkit as far as pass protection goes. He can handle power-based rushers or speed-based rushers. It doesn't really matter what the matchup is. He can handle it. And if you're looking at every single tackle prospect in this draft, like just on true drop-back passes, again, no screens, no RPOs, no play action, just straight up drop-back passes, he had the best overall pressure percentage allowed out of anybody. Better than M'Boue, better than Campbell, better than all of them. So for the Chiefs to get him with the 32nd overall pick, I thought that was a great value. And obviously, he fills an immediate need for this team. And, you know, even going into the draft, I understand that they signed Jalen Moore. I still thought they needed an upgrade even after the Moore acquisition. Like, I wasn't sold that, you know, you could go into the season with Moore as your starting left tackle and be okay. I still thought they needed another one. And that's what Josh Simmons is. Like, I think if he's healthy, he will start over Jalen Moore because he's just flat out more talented. And ultimately, that means that they have a capable swing tackle behind Josh Simmons and behind Jawan Taylor. So the Chiefs are going from a situation where they had no viable left tackle, so they had to put Joe Thuney out there, to all of a sudden having two viable left tackles. And if somebody gets hurt, like they have a swing that you can play right now immediately, and you don't have to rearrange the entire offensive line group just to try to sort of get okay left tackle play. So they've really insulated themselves from that worst case scenario that bit them in the ass last year. This was really good work by Brett Veach, and I think he had a great offseason. Finishing things up north now for our last two divisions, and we're going to start with the NFC North and the Chicago Bears. And the Bears are a little bit different than every other team in this video because I'm not talking about any player acquisition here. It's not about a draft pick or a trade target or a free agent pickup. It's all about Ben Johnson. The fact that they got Johnson as their new head coach easily is the best move this franchise has made this offseason, and it's one of the best moves this franchise has made in several years, if we're being honest. And not to put too much pressure on a rookie head coach or anything like that, but I really do get Sean McVay vibes from Ben Johnson. And that's not just because he's a great offensive coordinator turned head coach. Like, we all know he's great when it comes to scheming and installing game plans and, developing quarterbacks and maximizing his skill position players. Like, yeah, all that's great. But it's everything else, the CEO part of being a head coach. I think Ben Johnson is spectacular at. When it comes to owning the room and being a leader and instilling discipline and a winning culture with your football team, everything that I have heard about Johnson says that he is very Sean McVay-like in that way. And honestly, I think that's what makes McVay special out in LA. The fact that they have rebuilt that Rams team over and over and over again with new talent and been consistently successful. And their offense has changed their identity over and over and over again. Like, they're not even recognizable to the late 2010 Rams. That is because of Sean McVay and the culture that he instills and the flexibility that he has. It's just a rare, rare quality for a head coach to have. And I really do think that Ben Johnson is just as flexible, just as good of a team builder, just as good of a leader. I just think this is a really, really special hire for the Bears, and they needed it. Like, they absolutely needed Ben Johnson because, of course, they have Caleb Williams. And when you get gifted a quarterback as talented as Caleb Williams and he's in his second year, you really need to maximize his development. And who better to do that than Ben Johnson? From Chicago, we head up to Green Bay, Wisconsin, where, to me, again, it's a very easy call. Their best move of the offseason was drafting Matthew Golden in the first round. It has been literally decades since they've taken a receiver in the first round, and they were absolutely due. And quite frankly, I didn't think that Matthew Golden was even going to be available at their pick. So I thought they were very, very lucky that he was there. And I think he is going to be a really, really good Packer. As far as comps go, Golden reminds me a lot of a young Brandon Cooks. He's not the biggest guy in the world, obviously, but he's got excellent deep speed. His short area acceleration is elite. I think he's a great route runner. I think he adjusts to kind of, let's say, questionable balls really well. His quarterback at Texas definitely threw some, let's say, less than accurate passes deep down the field that Golden just kind of made him correct on, because he's a really good deep ball tracker and he's got excellent hands, especially through contact. So I understand he doesn't have like the look or the build of a traditional number one receiver because he's just not that big. He's not like a Julio Jones and AJ Green type. But I'll tell you what, Brandon Cooks, early on in his NFL journey, like, he was a legitimate number one. That's why teams kept trading first-round picks for him over and over again. And when you have his kind of separation ability, his kind of hands, his kind of toughness and work ethic, I think he is absolutely going to be the best receiver in a Green Bay Packer uniform this year. And this is an offense that has really missed having a number one since the departure of Davante Adams. It was great value, a great fit, and I think Packers fans should be ecstatic. Next up, we have Minnesota, who is fresh off a pretty extensive spending spree this offseason. They brought in multiple starters on both the offensive and defensive lines, but it's their duo of, I guess you can call them defensive ends, but they're also defensive tackles. So let's just say vaguely defensive linemen, because we don't really know exactly where these guys are going to line up. But their duo of Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave together, I think collectively was their best move of the offseason. And the reason why I say they could be either a defensive end or a defensive tackle is because they're probably going to play both. The way this defense is structured, it's extremely blitz heavy, especially on early downs. And you've got pieces that line up all over the place, right? Sometimes these two are going to line up as like 5 technique defensive ends if you're playing like a 5-05, or a 4-eye if you're playing a tight front or like a variation of a tight front. Sometimes you're going to get like a nose shade, so that's going to be Harrison Phillips, and then one's going to be a 5 technique and there's going to be a 3 technique. Sometimes you're going to have double 2s if you're in certain nickel looks. Like, they just line up everywhere in this defense. And it's because they're very blitz heavy, they're very stunt heavy, and the whole point is having flexible pieces that can do a little bit of everything so that it's a lot harder to game plan against. If you see Jonathan Allen lined up in a particular spot or Hargrave lined up in a particular spot, you don't really know what they're going to do. And that is why this defense has been so good. It's very ambiguous. It's very aggressive. And they test your protections relentlessly by moving guys around and seeing how you react. And then they're going to call whatever blitz they need to exploit whatever protection you're showing on film. Or in some cases, throughout that same game, you might handle a certain look a certain way in the first quarter, and then they're going to come back to it in the third quarter and get like a sack fumble on you. So again, it's a very different style of defense, but it only works because of the personnel that they have, or rather the flexibility of the personnel that they have. And Jonathan Allen and Hargrave both joining this team, I think, is just leaning into that flexibility even more. So I love that addition for them. They're both great fits, and I think they're going to have very strong years this year. Finally, rounding out the NFC North, we have the reigning division champion Detroit Lions, who have leaned even more heavily into their man coverage identity on defense, picking up DJ Reed from the Jets. Reed, you could argue, was the Jets' most effective corner last year, and that's saying a lot because obviously he was playing across from Sauce Gardner. I think he's a tremendously talented man cover corner. The Jets were ranked fairly highly as far as man coverage percentage goes, but the Lions were higher than everybody. They were literally first in the NFL in man coverage calls last year, with about 40% of all of their coverage calls being man coverage. That might not sound like a lot, but trust me, that is. The NFL average is about 25% man. Now, obviously, they do have a new defensive coordinator this year, but I feel like the identity will both be retained and maybe even amped up a little bit. Because if you're looking at a secondary of Terrion Arnold, DJ Reed, Amik Robertson, Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, Avonte Maddox coming off the bench, and their second-round pick from last year, Ennis Rakestraw Jr., you got a lot of DBs that can man up on skill position players all over the field. I'd be willing to bet that this Lions defense is going to be just as aggressive as they were last year, and they're going to challenge offenses to beat all these one-on-ones all over the field and get the ball out faster than Aiden Hutchinson can get to the quarterback, which, as we know, is easier said than done. As far as I'm concerned, you have 2.5 seconds at most to do anything against this Lions defense, and if you go over that 2.5, you're probably taking a loss, if we're being honest. I love this pickup of Reed for them. I just think it reinforces the identity that already existed, and I think he is a perfect fit for what they love to do. All right, here we go. Last division of the day, starting with the Cleveland Browns. And my favorite move, or I should say moves, that they made this entire offseason was completely rebuilding their backfield. They got younger, they got cheaper, and overall, I would say they got more explosive. The addition of Quinshon Judkins as their presumptive number one running back kind of takes the sting out of Nick Chubb no longer being in Cleveland. Not that I want to directly compare him to Nick Chubb, because Chubb is one of the most talented runners I've ever seen, personally, but Judkins is an excellent running back prospect in his own right. I had him as RB4 in this class behind pretty much everybody's consensus top trio, but just because I had him as RB4 doesn't mean that he can't easily be just as productive as RBs 1 through 3. He has all the talent and all the traits you want from a true bell cow running back. Whether it's power, whether it's lateral agility, vision. I think he's got really underrated long speed as well. And I love that he kind of showed his versatile skill set at multiple stops. Like if you go back to Ole Miss, it was very inside zone heavy. It was a lot of just kind of banging in between the tackles and using his power and dragging guys forward and getting 4 yards out of a 2-yard gain just on sheer will and determination. Whereas at Ohio State, it was a lot more boundary runs that they let him do. A lot of outside zone, a lot of pin and pulls, some jet sweep stuff here and there. And they let him really stretch his legs and show how fast he was when rounding the corner. So the fact that he was successful in multiple styles of offense, doing multiple different things, that to me signals that he can absolutely be a number one running back in the NFL and a darn good one to boot. And I got to bring up Dylan Sampson too, who as of right now is slated as their RB3, but I wouldn't be shocked if he's their RB2 by like the end of July. Full disclosure, I had Sampson as my RB6 in this class. So the Browns got RB4 and RB6 in the same draft, and they complement each other really well. I mean, there were multiple teams that were looking at Sampson as not just a running back, but even as a slot receiver. After he did the full running back workout at the combine, he stayed out there and he went through all the receiver drills too on the request of teams. So I think it's not out of the realm of possibility that we see both of them on the field at the same time. Judkins in the backfield, Sampson in the slot, or maybe even both of them in the backfield and Judkins blocking for Sampson, kind of like what we saw Ohio State do. The world's their oyster. They can kind of do whatever they want. But either way, both of these guys are extremely talented. They're extremely versatile. And I think they're going to complement each other, not just when one of them is on the field, but when both of them are on the field. Staying in the state of Ohio, we have the Cincinnati Bengals up next. And to me, the best move they made this offseason was drafting Dylan Fairchild in the 3rd round. Now, there was a trio of Georgia interior offensive linemen in this draft. In full disclosure, I had Fairchild as the lowest graded of the 3, but that's not really a slight on Fairchild. That's just how good Tate Ratledge and Jared Wilson were. I think Fairchild himself was also a really good prospect. And boy, the Bengals desperately needed him to be there on the board because they could not go another year with the same quality of guard play as they had in 2024. Like, it was not ideal. Like, let's just be diplomatic about it. Not ideal at all. This team really, really needed a new guard. Dylan Fairchild was there on the board, and he was very, very solid at Georgia. I thought it was appropriate value for him. He's got good length for a guard. I thought his hand placement and, overall punch accuracy was really strong. And I think his communication skills showed up on tape as well. Like, if you watch that Georgia trio between Fairchild, Wilson, and Ratledge, the way that they were able to handle stunts and blitzes together, like, they were NFL ready in that department. So I don't think Fairchild's going to be missing any assignments anytime soon. Like, between the ears, he is 100% ready to go. And again, just because I had him as my 3rd ranked Georgia interior lineman doesn't mean that I didn't like the pick. It just means that all of Georgia's interior line last year was stupid good. So I'm really happy the Bengals were able to nab him. They needed a guard more than arguably any other team in this draft, and they finally got one. Moving on over to Western PA, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers up next, and my God, I love the Derek Harmon pick so much. Like, I literally screamed for joy when I saw that pick go through. It is such a good fit. My comp for him was literally Stephon Tuitt, okay? And that was before he even went to Pittsburgh. Like, the entire draft process, I was comparing him to Tuitt, and the fact that he ended up in Pittsburgh to play the same role that Stephon Tuitt played with the same defensive line coach and the same head coach and Mike Tomlin, like, I cannot imagine a better fit for him. I think he is going to be an excellent Steeler and one of the solutions to a very sneaky problem that Pittsburgh has had the last couple of years, and that is a lack of interior pass rush outside of Cam Hayward. And Cam is still great. Like, somehow, against all odds, even at his age, he is still great. But this team has really needed to find him a partner in crime ever since, obviously, not having Stephon Tuitt anymore. And they've been trying to find a bunch of different solutions over the years and just haven't really found one that stuck. I think Derek Harmon is going to stick. He led all interior pass rushers in this entire class in pressures, and it wasn't particularly close. His first step, his lateral agility, the pop that he has in his hands, I mean, when he beats a guard, he beats them immediately. And really his only drawback as a pass rusher, if you can even call it that, is, there's a little bit of stiffness in his hips, so sometimes he doesn't finish plays that he starts, but he's so good at setting up the pins that everybody else in that Oregon front just kind of knocked him down anyway. Like, he might not get the sack himself, but he's going to make the quarterback run into somebody else who will. So I know TJ Watt's going to love playing with this guy because he's just going to completely mess everything up on the inside, and it's going to make TJ's job way, way easier as a finisher. He is an A-plus football player, an A-plus person, and I think he's going to be there in Pittsburgh for a long, long time. Finishing off this gauntlet of a video, we have our last team of the day, the Baltimore Ravens. And I got to hand it to them, there was no pick more predictable in the entire draft than Malachi Starks. And that was my favorite move they made this entire offseason because we just all kind of saw it coming for 3 months straight. There was no logical reason for Malachi Starks to be available that late in the draft, but we all just kind of knew he would be because he was going to be a Raven. He's a perfect fit for what they do. Like, this team adores versatile safeties that can line up anywhere and do anything. And Malachi Starks can line up anywhere and do anything. You want him to play in the post as like an Earl Thomas type free safety, he can do that. If you want him to be a strong safety, whether you're starting in a too high look and you roll him down at the snap, or maybe you want to start in like a defined middle field close look and have him be like a quasi linebacker, I guess you could say like a Cam Chancellor, to use another Seattle safety archetype. He can do that too because he's a great tackler and he's super physical. Or if you want him to be a nickel, Like as a safety, you can still play him at nickel. If you want to move Kyle Hamilton somewhere else and use him in a different way, like you can easily have Malachi Starks do the Kyle Hamilton role. And that versatility is so crucial because to me, when I look at the Ravens secondary, when they're at their best, and especially the Ravens safety group, historically, when they've been at their best, it's because they have a bunch of guys that are super versatile and that insulates them from injury. Like if you take an injury to Kyle Hamilton, as devastating as that is, because it's Kyle Hamilton, you have Malachi Starks now. Like you're insulated from injury. He can do all the Kyle Hamilton stuff, but he can also do the Ardarius Washington role, or he can do the Marcus Williams role once upon a time. Like there's nothing that he can't do. And so you can move him all over, especially with Hamilton on the field. You can move both of them all over and just be insulated from the worst case scenario. Like you're never going to be playing square pegs in round holes because they fit everywhere. You can fit the run from any look you want because, again, they're just basically linebackers that move like DBs. Like this versatility, it's just everything for how this defense has historically functioned. And that's why everybody knew that Malachi Starks, if he was on the board, he was going to be a Raven because he is the most Ravensy safety, not just in this draft, but in the last couple drafts. So I'm really happy he ended up where he ended up. I think it's a dream fit for both organization and player. And I think ultimately he's going to be a great Baltimore Raven. And with that, that'll be it for me today. We touched on every single team in the league. And as a result, I'm sure this video is extremely long. So I appreciate you guys that are here at the end. Whether you just watched your team or you watched me talk about every single team today, I appreciate you going on this journey through the league with me. And hopefully I'll be back soon. Thank you once again to the NFL for inviting me to come on and talk a little football. I appreciate their hospitality as always, and I will be seeing all of you, hopefully, sometime soon.